From our 22 News Broadcast Center, this is 22 News in Focus.
Sunday afternoon. Welcome to 22 News in Focus. I'm Tamara Sakarzik. From kindergarten to college, thousands of students will be heading back to school over the next couple of weeks. This week on 22 News in Focus, we'll be discussing both physical and mental health issues that can be associated with going back to school. We'll also talk about what parents can do to help support their kids. Joining me right now is Dr. John O'Reilly. He's a pediatrician at Bay State Children's Hospital. Thanks for being with us today.
Sure. Thanks for being here.
So I'd like to start by talking to you about doctor's appointments, immunizations, things like that. How often do kids need these, and how do parents know?
Well, actually the immunization stuff starts when the kids are first born in the hospital. They'll probably get their first shot. And when the babies are there in the first couple years, they'll get a series of visits and a series of shots. And the pediatrician will be checking growth and development and other things with the kids. And the immunizations are an important part about keeping the kids healthy. So immunizations are safe, they're effective. And so the babies have, in the first 2 years, a number of shots. And as they get ready to get into kindergarten, we know that the immunity against these illnesses fades. So right before kindergarten, age 4, age 5, kids get a series of boosters of four different types of immunizations so that their immunity is ready for all the kids get together for kindergarten and share things and kiss each other, and their immune system is ready for those illnesses. The kids goes along well, their immunity keeps up till about 7th grade. Then we give them another series of boosters and actually expand some of the illnesses that we prevent. And then right before college, when they're going to be in the dorms in that setting, we give kids another set of shots.
And is this a legal requirement here in Massachusetts? Is this something that, you know, if you're going to a public school or a public college, that parents have to do?
Sure. Well, you know, the state is responsible that the kids are safe within the schools. So they want to create a safe space, and vaccines are an important part of that. So essentially under state law, kids have to be vaccinated unless there's 2 exceptions. One is a medical exception, and let's say I have a child that has leukemia and is getting chemotherapy, and their immune system can't really deal with viruses well. Well, I'm not going to give that child a vaccine that might have a live virus with it. So I will write a note to say this child needs a medical exception for this vaccine. The other state, a lot of in terms of vaccine exemptions, is a religious exemption. And the way the state law 76 sort of reads is, if there's not any sort of outbreak or any problem in terms of public health, a child can go to school without the required vaccines if the parent in writing says that they have a religious exemption or objection to the vaccines.
And what about just physicals in general? Should children be getting these every year? And if so, should doctors be looking for, or are they looking for specific things?
Sure. So a yearly physical is an important part of keeping your child healthy. So doctors sort of do a head-to-toe thing in terms of things. And so thinking about the students, we want to make sure their vision is good, they can see the board in the school, their hearing is good. We also think about things like any chronic diseases. If the child has asthma, we want to make sure that their asthma is under good control, and then we get the asthma medicine for the kids. If they have other illnesses, they have GI illnesses, they have headaches, they have other conditions that would interfere with their ability to really be in school, present and focused, the pediatrician will work with the families at those annual physicals.
If there is some type of medical issue that could interrupt their schoolwork perhaps, or how they perform in school, are you required to tell the school, or are their parents required to tell the school?
Well, it's not quite a requirement per se, but I think for those kids we want to keep them healthy. So as a pediatrician, I want to know that they have their asthma medication and don't sort of sit in the back of the class and suffer. Or if they have migraine headaches, that they have the medicine that they need. So we really partner closely with our school nurses. And there are certain forms that I'll fill out to say, okay, Johnny can have his albuterol inhaler and this is when he can use it. Or Mary can have her migraine medicine, and if she comes to you, this is how you should give it. So we really, and allergies and food allergies is certainly another big area where the kids need to have their EpiPen. It's important that when their illness strikes, that they have medicines. Kids are in school for 6+ hours a day. We need to keep them healthy during that time.
And I know that personally, through my experience, I have epilepsy and I was diagnosed in high school. Who should parents tell about something like that, epilepsy or diabetes, where if somebody just goes down, who should know what's happening?
Sure, those are particularly important illnesses because of that. The child will have some serious medical complications. So that we talk about having sort of care plans in place. So if a child has a seizure disorder, the parent should bring that immediate seizure med into the school and have the paperwork done. So the nurse or the principal or whoever, when they hear that that child has had a seizure or fainted from epilepsy, that the medicines are right there in the nurse's office and they can get the treatment right away.
So you wouldn't recommend having them carry the medicine around themselves? They should definitely leave it with the nurse?
Sure. I think that the idea basically is older kids, if you're in upper level of high school and then you have an inhaler that you know how to use, that's one thing. But I think for something like a seizure, you know, that's an emergency, or somebody has an anaphylactic reaction to peanuts.
Oh, yeah.
They don't have the ability to tell somebody, hey, my EpiPen is in my backpack in the third pocket. No, the nurse needs to know, and there has to be an action plan so everyone in the office knows, the teacher knows, and we're prepared to keep that kid healthy and safe.
If something like that does happen, you were just saying it's very important to have an action plan. How important is it to update your emergency contact list so the school knows who to call when?
Oh, that's critical, right? And I think for those serious illnesses, those kids may be transported to the emergency room right away from school. And the idea of having this kid in an ambulance with strangers and wind up in a, that's terrible for the child, both medically and psychologically. But even the kid that has a fever and is miserable and waiting for the parent for 4 hours, the kid suffers. So it's really important for parents. You know, we all have cell phones now and we all have different contacts. So really update those numbers. So again, that we can, the school can contact you if a quick emergency, or also that their child needs some help and needs to go home.
Right, because I'm sure most parents would definitely want to know and be able to be there as soon as possible.
Absolutely.
So very important. And it is starting to get colder outside, so when we're talking about other illnesses like the flu, when should children get flu shots? Does it depend on age? Does it depend on any other type of circumstance?
So the flu, basically we start at 6 months, because when they're little babies, they still have their mom's antibodies. They're still protected. But starting at 6 months, we start to give kids the flu shot every year. And basically we need to do it every year because the type of flu virus that's coming around changes every year. And they're trying to figure out in advance, based on trends across the world, boy, we think in Springfield, these are the flu viruses that will come. Let's protect our kids with that. And that changes year to year. So it's really critical to get that flu shot every year.
This is a question that I'm curious about. When's the best time to actually get a flu shot? Because I think we all hear different things. I know that some people say you should get them as soon as they're out. Then other people say, no, they're going to wear off by the time the flu's really, prevalent.
All right, you're going to get me in trouble on this one, right? I think the answer is get it as soon as you can. Although I know I had a partner, another pediatrician I work with, who would only get it in November because he felt that it wouldn't last.
Was nervous.
Yeah, so I think that the reality of our crazy lives, hectic lives, and we can't judge when the flu's going to hit. So that, yeah, if it hits in April, you're immune, you're maybe less immune, but if it comes in October and you don't plan to get your vaccine until November, you're in a lot of trouble. So I think the state has released their flu vaccines to pediatricians. In the next couple of weeks, people will be hearing from their pediatrician that it's time to come in.
Okay, and as for the cold versus the flu, how can you tell your child has the cold, and then how can you tell they should probably go to the doctor, it's the flu?
Well, it really depends on how sick your child looks. So, we sort of say if kids have the flu, they look like a truck hit them. They're miserable, they're terrible, they're in pain, they ache all over, they have high fevers, they have a bad cough, and they don't want to get out of bed. Then you say, boy, he's sick. Now, whether it's influenza A or it's some other virus, that's a kid that should see the doctor. If your kid has a little bit of a temperature and a little bit of a runny nose or a little bit of a cough and running around, they probably don't have a serious enough flu that they need to go in and see the pediatrician.
So it's really just about monitoring the symptoms and making sure.
Right. Take care of their symptoms, have medications if they're in pain or if they have fever, always plenty of fluids, make sure they're still well hydrated, get food into them. And if they have difficulty breathing, if they're having difficulty moving their arms or legs, boy, it doesn't matter what it is, they need to go in and see their doctor.
Right, very important advice. All right, well, next we're going to talk about what your child eats because that can also affect their health during the school year. So we'll talk about that when we come back. You're watching 22 News in Focus. Welcome back to 22 News in Focus. We've been talking about what parents can do to help keep their children healthy during the school year. So let's start to talk about sports. If your child plays sports, are there any specific things that doctors look for during your annual physical?
Sure, there's a whole series of things and it depends on the sport, right? Each sport has its own particular risk, and each child has their own particular risk from their biology. So besides the general head-to-toe kind of thing and checking things like blood pressure and pulse and the usual stuff, we're going to make sure that their heart is working well. We're going to ask specific questions. And in Massachusetts, there's the Massachusetts Interscholastic Athletic Association. And the kids have to do maybe a 30-question thing to point out risk. What about the family? Is there family history of heart problems, let's say, or arrhythmias? And then a personal history, if they have trouble with vision, say, in one eye, or have trouble with a kidney, or that's going to make a difference in terms of what we recommend. We want kids to participate, so for the majority of kids, we're going to figure out a way that they can participate in sports. But there are certain things, if you have one kidney, you don't really want to be playing tackle football.
Right.
We're going to be doing something else. So the pediatrician looks at the risks, goes through the family history, and really works with the kid. And especially in terms of a neuromuscular exam, if they're going to be a pitcher, well, let's talk about that elbow. If they're going to do other sports, let's talk about the mechanics of the girl soccer players and their ACLs. How do we prevent injuries? What should we do? And knowing the type of sports, knowing that what it puts them at risk for, we try to tailor it to each child.
And speaking of injuries, if your child is injured, either playing a sport or maybe even in gym class, what should you as a parent do, knowing that so many parents get very concerned if their child is hurt?
Sure, I think if they're playing a high school level sport where there's a trainer, the first point of contact is going to be the trainer, and the trainer is going to do an evaluation and give the parents some idea of what's going on. I always, as a pediatrician, I've learned to listen to mom's instinct. So if mom is worried that, boy, that was a significant problem with an orthopedic injury, another injury, I'm going to say, come on in, let's take a look. But if you see the next day, your child's just not acting right or not walking right or being in pain when they move, have the doctor see him. But I think the idea the trainer can also work with the high school athletes to get out of sports, do a rehab program. But better safe than sorry. This idea of, no pain, no gain, no. If they're in pain, they shouldn't play.
So they shouldn't just rub some dirt on it.
Right, no, that's my old era, but
Yeah.
yes. See,
and with gym classes, physical education classes, I know that I personally was one of those students that did not want any part of it. So how do you know that your child's hurt enough to sit out in class and not just trying to come up with an excuse, perhaps?
Yeah, we deal with both ends, right? We deal with athletes that don't want to come out. No, doc, it's only blood, it's okay,
Yeah.
And we have to keep those folks, in healthy enough to go back and continue playing long-term with whatever sport they are. But we also have to nudge some kids into physical activity. I think now the issue is so many kids want to do their screens, they want to do their Xbox, they want to do video games, but they don't want to get out and exercise, and we have to really push and encourage that. As teenagers are a little uncomfortable with the swim classes and other things, and sometimes we say, listen, it's about aerobics, it's about healthiness, and we kind of work with them along those lines.
And speaking of gym classes and recess, things like that, many schools have been kind of cutting back on these where you're not doing it for as long, or maybe you can even opt out of certain situations. How important is exercise for children and teenagers?
Well, I think we can see with the obesity epidemic, it's critical, right? And I think the other thing, from an educational point of view, exercise is something that gets your heart going, it gets your brain going, it builds up certain chemicals in your prefrontal cortex. I can focus better. And I think it's really important. I think kids that are sitting there all day will just start to fade. They won't pay attention. So getting up, even if they're just getting up and stretching and doing things in class, that's better than allowing them just to sit there. So I'm a big proponent of exercise is good for the body, but it's also very good for the brain.
How important is it for them to keep drinking water throughout the day? Would you say that's equally important, especially if they're getting out in the field and running and doing these types of activities?
Right. So I think in terms of kids that are exercising, especially now it's August, and kids are getting out to double sessions of football, and we really worry about dehydration, heat exhaustion, and so on. Even the kids that are running around, excuse me, need to have a little bit of water. But the idea being, all kids need to be drinking some, because again, as they get dehydrated, they start to slow down a little bit. Their brain starts to slow down a little, they start to fade a little. We want these kids alert, active, and engaged in class.
And back to our conversation about sports and sports injuries, I know a topic on many parents' minds lately has been concussions, especially football players, but this can also happen in some other sports that we've seen. How big of a concern should this be for parents, and which sports should they be concerned about or keep an eye on?
Well, I think almost any sport in which there is contact to the brain, to the head, it can happen. One of my daughters played soccer and she had a bad concussion in soccer. One of my sons played basketball, had a couple of concussions playing basketball. I think we now know with the things that are happening with the NFL and the CTE, the chronic traumatic encephalopathies, that's the severe end. But I think concussions are much more serious than we thought, especially if we think of a young brain that's growing and developing, and one that we're asking to stay in class, stay alert, right, memorize things, because a concussion really can interfere with the brain's working, and interferes a lot more than we assumed 10 years ago.
And moving on to nutrition, we know that eating breakfast, of course, is important. Is that a critical component to your child's day? Should that be?
Sure. I think you think about the kids' bodies, they're going at 100 miles an hour. They're like a race car. You need to put the high-test gasoline in. If the body doesn't eat for 12 hours, it starts to break down things instead of the food. So the kids start to break down muscles if you're an athlete. It also starts to get these ketone things, and your brain just doesn't work well without ongoing nutrition. So breakfast, lunch are very important. Snacks for athletes, right, before they go off, so they have the energy to play their sport or do their practice, and afterward for recovery. Their muscles have been really stressed. Boy, let's give them something after for recovery.
What are some of the best snacks that your child can eat if they have to go through an entire school day and then have a hour or two break and then have to play a sport?
Yeah, I think it's about balance. So I think there's a balance of protein, some complex carbs, some short-acting carbs if they're ready before practice. They have these expensive sports bars and things, but you can give nuts for some things, and oatmeal, coconut, those sort of things if you don't want to go with a sports bar. And also, I think, what was great news to me is that chocolate milk was supposed to be now a great recovery drink. So I'm all for any science that I agree with, I'm going to promote.
I've read
chocolate
that.
milk for everybody.
So other than snacks, what would you recommend for like a middle day lunch or something to hold you over until that snacking point?
Right. Again, I think it's very similar in a sense that you need some level of protein, and that keeps you satisfied and not hungry, and some complex carbohydrates that are going to be stored. So whether that's quinoa, potatoes, oatmeal, whatever, so that it's not these quick energy things that your sugar level goes up and then it crashes. You need to give them the calories that are going to last till that practice starts.
Okay, and speaking of crashing, how much sleep do you think that a child should get, depending? I'm sure it's different from, elementary school to high school to college.
That's a great segue, by the way, because I think we're worried about our teenagers that are up all night on their phones, they're texting, they're looking at things, and they're not getting the correct amount of sleep. So younger kids, probably between 10 and 12 hours of sleep. And when you get to the teen years, 13 and beyond, at least 8 to 10. And when they're sort of burning the candle at both ends, they're staying up late, not only are our young drivers at risk for accidents because they can't focus as well, it impacts their mood. They're more likely to be depressed or anxious. They're more likely to make mistakes in school. They're more likely to be not paying attention because they're zoning out. So sleep is important. Hydration we talked about is important, and nutrition is really important.
Okay, so all great things for parents to keep in mind at home. For some students, school can cause a lot of stress. We'll talk about how you can help your child deal with the stress when we come back. You're watching 22 News in Focus. Watching 22 News in Focus. Students across Western Massachusetts are heading back to school, so we've been talking about ways to keep your kids healthy during the school year and help them deal with stress, because that can be a huge part of that. I'm joined by Tanisha Burton, a licensed independent social worker and program manager for the Caring Together program, and Kimberly Lee, Vice President of Development for the Center for Human Development. Thank you both of us for being here today.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, of course. I want to start by asking you both just a little bit about your organizations.
So the Caring Together program is actually one of 70 different programs and services that are provided through the Center for Human Development, or CHD. We have a very large footprint geographically. We cover all of Western Massachusetts as well as Northern Connecticut. And if you can think of a social cause, an issue, or a concern that matters to you or to your viewers at home, to the community at large, rest assured that CHD is working on it. So everything from caring for individuals with Alzheimer's to foster care, to providing shelter diversion and homelessness services, programming for individuals with intellectual disabilities, substance use recovery, outpatient behavioral health and emotional wellness services. So we really do run the gamut from infants in early intervention all the way to seniors in their 90s and everything in between.
Okay.
And so I am the clinician at our Latency STAR program, and STAR stands for Stabilization, Assessment, and Rapid Reentry. And we have about 6 kids, a 6-bed facility where they stay with us for 45-day stay, up to 45 days, sometimes it's longer, and we do diagnostic assessments, we do behavioral observations, we make recommendations for their further placement if they are not going home. Most of our young people are departmentally referred, DCF, or Department of Children and Families, so some of them are removed from their homes based on their home life being unsafe, and some of them are removed from their homes based on their behaviors making their home life unsafe. So I'm the clinician there at that program.
Okay, so jumping right into things, I want to start by talking about back to school jitters or first time school jitters. If you're going into, or if your child's going into kindergarten or preschool and they're leaving mom for the first time, probably not too happy about that. How can you help them deal with separation anxiety?
Separation anxiety is something that everyone experiences. Over 6 million young people, and adults included, have anxiety in America, and it usually starts in childhood. So in order to help keep that attachment strong and help kids to feel safe and secure, parents can do things like just reassure them that, you know, this is a next step in life, that everybody takes this step by going to school. And one important thing that parents can remember to do is to check their own anxieties, because sometimes they're putting a lot of their fears onto their child and projecting. So we have to be very important to make sure to differentiate between, is this my anxiety and my guilt, or is this my child? Am I really hearing what my child's worries are? So making sure you're identifying what your needs versus their needs are, and just reminding them this is a step in everyone's life, you know, that you go to school, but I'll be here when you get home, and to familiarize them as much as possible with where they will be going.
I was just going to add, and that's a great point, Tanisha. You know, I remember when our now teenagers went to kindergarten for the first time. And I remember wanting to take them to the school, wanting to give them an opportunity to actually see where they were going, to go into the school, to know where their classroom was. We actually encouraged their kindergarten teacher to send them both messages over email so that we could then read to our children to say, oh, you know, Mrs. Lang sent you this wonderful message. You know, she's so excited that you're going to be coming and she can't wait to, you know, spend time with you on your very first day. So, you know, our children really do, as Tanisha mentioned, our children will react to us. If we feel anxious, they tend to feel anxious. If we feel scared and we're nervous, they'll feel scared and nervous. So it's a great opportunity for us to just check ourselves as adults to make sure that we're not projecting unnecessary emotions to our children.
And that being said, I know that this can also be a very difficult time for parents, especially if this is their first child and they're going off to kindergarten by themselves. If their child throws a temper tantrum or just starts bawling their eyes out, falls on the ground, starts flailing their limbs, how should you deal with that?
Well, you know, it really is, I would think, on a child, you know, it's by a child by child basis. I think at that time it's important to understand how they're feeling in that moment. And again, you know, not wanting to exasperate or to heighten the level of anxiety or uneasiness that they're already feeling. So it's really understanding, so what is it that they're reacting to? Is it that they're reacting to going to school? Is it that they're reacting to the fact that they can't watch a favorite show on television anymore? And so by reassuring them to say, we'll tape it, and when you get home, we can simply watch it together. There isn't a thing you're going to miss. So I think it's really understanding exactly what it is or why it is that they're objecting in such a dramatic way.
You make an awesome point in terms of figuring out what it is. That's one of the things we do at our program. We seek to identify the underlying emotion behind the behavior. So that's the most important thing, because if we just react to the behavior, we might be missing a bigger worry or a bigger fear that we could help calm by explaining. We will tape your show. It will be here when you get ready to come home. So I think that's a great point, Kim.
And it's not just, you know, kindergartners and preschoolers who have this problem. It can also be high school students and middle school students that are starting a brand new big school for the first time. So since this can also be stressful, how do you help your older child deal with this type of stress?
Well, it's a great question, and it explains why I'm wearing the shirt that I'm wearing, in case viewers at home were wondering. So, how are you? Just 3 simple words that you can question or ask to your children in terms of gauging their emotional state and their emotional wellness. And so asking them, how are you feeling about going back to school? Or how are you feeling about summer ending? How are you feeling about making the transition to go back to school? And their responses will really help you to elicit a lot of important information about anxiety, nervousness. You know, some children transition well and others don't. But again, I think it's having those conversations a week before school starts. You know, we're going to start getting ready. Let's go out and buy some school supplies. In fact, let's make an event out of it. Let's first go for pizza, and then let's go to get school supplies. So it's not, oh, the dreaded school supplies, or oh, I'm going back to school. But won't it be great that you're going to be able to see your friends again? You know, you really haven't spent much time with them all summer, and then there's going to be football games, and then there's dances, and then there's all these other social opportunities. So I think the more positive we as parents can make the transition, the more positive it will be for our teenagers.
And speaking of transitions, college can also be another very challenging transition. If your child has anxiety about going to college for the first time, or maybe transferring schools, is that the same way that you should deal with it?
Well, I think, you know, it's pretty much, you know, similarly.
I think preparation is definitely key in terms of helping to identify positive experiences. And yes, it's definitely going to be nerve-wracking and scary, but focus on the positive, because there's also eustress as well, and eustress can drive us and motivate us to do well. So this is, you know, an opportunity for a new journey, an opportunity to learn new things, new people, new experiences. So focus on the positive things and make it become a very positive experience, but also validate the negativity that they might be feeling. You know, explore some of the questions and what fears that you might have, and see how you guys can come up with a mutual game plan to maybe meet more people, get in touch with your professors, be just prepared.
You know, that's an excellent point, Tanisha. In fact, a colleague of mine had her daughter go off to college, and it was her first child going off to college. And what they did was they reached out in advance of that first day move-in to their roommate. So even before they went to college or, you know, showed up in the room for the first time, they had had a chance to Skype one another. They had had a chance to learn about mutual and shared interests. They actually even met a couple of times for lunch and coffee. So when they came together on that very first day, they were already good friends, and they felt very comfortable with one another to know, okay, at least I have one person, at least I know somebody who has similar interests and likes as I do. So I would recommend, if there is the possibility of doing that, to do that as a way to minimize that transition that they're feeling.
Yeah, that's great advice, because if at least they know someone, or they feel like they know someone going into it. All right, well, we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we'll look at how parents can address specific issues, including bullying and some test anxiety. You're watching 22 News in Focus. Welcome back to 22 News in Focus. Today we're talking about problems your child could deal with as they head back to school. Bullying is one of the biggest concerns for both children and parents. What are some of the warning signs that a child is getting bullied? And I mean, nowadays we're not just talking about person-to-person bullying, we're also talking about social media, the internet.
It's, you know, Tanisha, you may want to certainly weigh in as well. You know, absolutely signs of withdrawal. Conversations around not feeling, you know, doubting their self-worth, changes in appetite or eating habits, sleeping patterns that would be effective, and whether that's too much sleep or not enough sleep. And those symptoms would actually cross over to different situations that children might be facing as well, and not just bullying, but depression, anxiety as well. And so again, it's just really being in tune with how your children, asking them how they are, and if they do reveal that there is a bullying situation, most schools across Massachusetts actually have an anti-bullying policy, or there are bullying policies that the schools have adopted. And so working with your child's guidance counselor, a teacher, perhaps a school nurse, because it's tricky, you know. It
definitely is you have to strike a balance, because you don't want the child to feel like they're going to get any more negative repercussions by being open about what has happened to them, but you want them to be open about what has happened to them. So increasing their assertiveness and just watching out, like Kim said, more cues of being withdrawn, maybe activities that they'd once find pleasure in, they're choosing to sit back or sit out. No, I don't have to go to this game, or no, I don't have to go to this practice, or I don't think I feel good today, maybe I don't want to be on dance. Or if you start hearing a lot more negative self-talk, or I'm not as good as such and such, just listen. Like Kim said, be in tune with your child, and if you see any kind of grand deviation from their demeanor, their temperament, they're more withdrawn, they're more stressed out, they might even be more involved with social media because they're wanting to see what negative information is being put out there about them. So just try to stay on top of checking in with their friends and just their environment, and seeing if there are any negative or adverse things happening at school, and to be very to work in conjunction with the school in a very kind of like a covert way. You know, you want to be your child's support, but you don't want your child to feel like they can't defend themselves and that you need to come to their defense. So working in conjunction with the adjustment counselor and bringing it to their attention. And
talking about working with the school, when should you actually, and get the school involved with it? When is that point?
Violence, definitely, if there's any.
Right, immediately. If there has been any examples or any instances of violence, but again, if it's gotten to the point where your child is experiencing or exhibiting symptoms that both Tanisha and I have mentioned, it's really time, and to do it as a team. To make sure that your child is very involved, and when possible, your child is felt as if they are in control of how there are ramifications or of how the bullying is addressed. I just wanted to backtrack just a little bit too, because Tanisha brought up a really good point, and that was in terms of checking history, or if they're doing searches on their computer or on their phones or on a laptop around, how do I know I'm being bullied? How do I stand up to a bully? What are signs that somebody is bullying me? You should really, parents should and need to have all of their children's users' accounts, username, password, so that they're able to go in and check search history. They're able to check what they're posting on Instagram. They're able to look at what they might be posting on Facebook, but also, just as importantly, what people are posting to them. Because cyberbullying these days has really become just as intense, if you will, as bullying
if not more so, because there wasn't that platform for someone to, at the same time, in the widespreadness of it, hear something that makes you feel bad, or hear something that makes you feel more insecure about yourself, and that gives a wider group or bigger population more ammunition, or so the child thinks, because sometimes that's what matters too. It's the child's perception of the extent or the intensity of the bullying. What one child might consider, lighthearted ribbing, if your child is more sensitive or feels that it's going to be blown out of proportion, and the whole school is now going to be aware. So it's very important for what your child, the perception that your child feels the bullying, the extent of it is.
And speaking of online bullying specifically, because this is giving people a chance to hide behind that computer screen or their cell phone, and it's a lot easier to say something about someone when you're not saying it to their face, of course, as we all know. So if your child's on the other end of that, if they're the ones maybe doing the bullying, what should parents do, and what are the warning signs of that, if any?
Again, and I feel like a little bit of a broken record. It's parents really need to be engaged with their children. They really need to know what they're doing and who they're communicating to, to be able to go in and look at the activity on their Instagram account. One of the first things my husband and I did when we found out our girls had their own Instagram accounts was we created an Instagram account, and then we followed them and they follow us. And so now anytime anything is posted, we know what it is, we know what they're saying. And now certainly, there are ways to get around that, but again, I think it's just being present and being an active part and listener in your child's life.
And I just want to be clear that, bullying doesn't always stop just because your child graduated high school. Correct. This kind of thing can continue in college.
Absolutely.
So are there programs or anything available?
There are anti-bullying, as Kim said, that the schools, Massachusetts has the protocol. On campus, I know there are a lot of college campuses that once it gets to that higher level, because then it becomes hazing, and some of the acts are more egregious, right. And it becomes more dangerous, because we hear of young people unfortunately taking their lives over situations like this. So there are campus, you can go to your resident director. Usually everybody, RAs are trained to look out for it. You can go to your campus's healthcare center. There are definitely protocols in place on every institution that is prepared for this and has an answer to it.
Okay, and many programs, as you just heard, are available to help your kids manage their anxiety. We'll talk about those right after the break. You're watching 22 News in Focus. Welcome Welcome back to 22 News in Focus. We've been talking about some of the anxieties that students can struggle with when going back to school. So I want to start by talking about test anxiety, homework anxiety. What's the best way to deal with that when your child is preparing for, this big test and they're freaking out?
Well, and I think you just said the magic word, and that is prepare. I think if children, teenagers, even college students understand the importance of being prepared. So not, binge studying and, not trying to cram 5 chapters into 5 hours of, overnight lack of sleep. Some of those very bad power energy drinks that the doctor just talked about in another segment. But it's really just being prepared and being organized, helping your children understand the importance of being organized. So if I have a test on Friday, that means that I should be giving at least an hour every day, starting on Monday, towards that learning that I need in order to be successful for that test.
And test anxiety is a very common thing. I know that at times I suffer from test anxiety. So regardless of if you're an A student or not, if you can be an awesome student and still suffer from test anxiety, performance anxiety, it's a big thing. And sometimes the parent has to remind the child not to put too much pressure on themselves, and also the parent has to be mindful to not put too much pressure on the young person either. And as Kim said, if you do a consistent amount of studying, and studies show that if you actually study a little bit before you go to sleep and then you sleep on it, you retain the information more. So you do a little bit, you study in chunks throughout the week, and then for the parent to just remind the young person that you are prepared.
Right.
You've done everything that you could, you are prepared for this, just go in there and do your best.
That's right.
And you were just talking about a great topic when parents can kind of put too much pressure onto their children. They want them to do great. They want them to, get into good colleges and all these things that parents worry about. So what are the signs, or are there any signs that you're the one stressing your child out?
Right. Well, yes, there are, and it's every parent wants their child to be successful, but to what extent? It can be overwhelming for a child with a parent who is constantly, why didn't you get an A? And what do you mean you came home with a B+? And why didn't you get named captain of the football team? Sometimes it's okay to get a C.
Right.
That's why there are effort marks in addition to academic marks, because if you're showing the effort and your heart is in it, and you're doing the studying and you're doing the prep and you're still pulling C's, well, maybe that's a message that says it's time for a tutor. Or it could be time for some other supports to help kids get good grades, but to not be so obsessed about it.
I agree with what you said in terms of the supports. You have to know when to bring in support. So if your child is doing everything they possibly can to familiarize with yourself with different issues your child may be experiencing, whether it be difficulty with attention, and to know when it's time to bring someone in or to go see someone. I know CHD offers a lot of programming that we have in-house that can come to you, or there are facilities that you can bring the kids to, different clinics. And again, work with the schools to find out, I noticed my child might be suffering in this area, or how, not bash the teacher, how come you didn't give my child an A, but I'm wondering what can we do to increase their grade or their grade point average, or are there things that can be done for the student? Why do you think it is that you got this grade, and what do you think we can do next time? Make it a collaborative thing so it's not you putting so much pressure on the young person.
And all children learn differently.
Correct.
All children learn differently, and so I think at times it's important that for our educational system to realize that. Some children learn visually, some children, learn through textbook or through hands-on. And so I think understanding as a parent, what learning style your child has will be very helpful and supportive in terms of helping them to reduce their test anxiety.
And jumping back to college students now, I remember when I first moved to Emerson College, I had to live off campus in an apartment immediately, and I remember being so freaked out. How do I do anything?
Right.
Courtesy of growing up with my mom, who did everything.
Right. Exactly.
How do you know that your child's literally on the verge of a breakdown, and what can you do to help them make that transition a little bit easier?
I think one of the things is to make sure that their cheerfulness and their feeling as though they're competent, while you as a parent may feel super proud, like, oh my goodness, my child is going away, they have it all together, explore that, because sometimes that can be a mask, and that's the tipping point, feeling that, oh no, I have it all together, or feeling as though I have to have it all together. It is okay to let go of some things and to take a step back from some things. Maybe your course load is not as heavy as you may have wanted it to be, but to be realistic about what your limitations are, and that it's okay to, again, individualize your learning and your involvement in certain things, and to just, when you start to feel stressed out, when you start to feel agitated and irritable, and you're not able to concentrate or focus, or you don't really want to be social, those are signs that you're being overwhelmed and you want to withdraw from your support systems because you're being overwhelmed. And it's actually the opposite of what you need, because we need supports, we need self-care, we need downtime, so that we can listen to our bodies and recognize that we might be on the verge of cracking.
And your point is a good one. You know, the comment about your mom, because I think if you asked my children, they would probably tell you that I am a hover mother.
Yeah.
I am one of those.
An airplane mom.
That's right. Do you need more water?
Or
Well, I'll
helicopter.
get you more water, right? So it's as parents, when is it time for us to step back? You know, when is it time for us to allow our children to really embrace their independence and to grow cognitively, emotionally, socially, educationally, and they can't do that if every whim or every need is being taken care of by an individual other than themselves, because really at the end of the day what we want is to create successful, you know, young anchor people who can go to Emerson, and which Emerson, by the way, great school, but who can survive on their own. Right, and so if we as parents are consistently, you know, doting and taking care of every need and whim, it really doesn't give them an opportunity to develop in such a way where you could drop them in the middle of Boston and they would be able to figure it out on their own.
Help them be comfortable with being able to navigate certain life skills, like shopping, you know, go to the grocery store, do certain things, laundry. If you've never done off-site laundry before, familiarize them with a laundromat. Give them a bus route, you know. Just, there are simple life skills that are important, and they help to feed your sense of independence and competency. So when you are thrown in the middle, you feel like, I can be self-reliant here.
And if they feel like they have to, you know, come home a lot, they want to see their parents again, they're missing home, they're homesick, is that something you should cater to, or kind of step back and say, you know, you were home last week and maybe stay put for this weekend?
That's right. I don't want your dirty laundry. Wait, come home another week.
I did it last week.
That's right. I did it last week. You know, it really is an interesting question, because it can raise a red flag. You know, what is happening on campus or what is not happening on campus that is promoting them or motivating them to want to come home. And it's campus drinking, alcohol, the potential for drugs, you know, behavior that they're not themselves comfortable with. It could be a really good indicator of, could be that the campus, the college, is really just not for them. So again, you know, reverting to the t-shirt here,
right.
It's just, you know, how are you?
Keeping them, yeah.
Right, just asking them, how are you?
Okay, well, we'll have the last word for you after the break. Stay with us. You're watching 22 News in Focus. That's our program for today. We want to thank all of our guests for joining us, and thank you at home for watching. If you missed any of today's show, you can watch it in full on our website at wwlp.com. From all of us here at 22 News, we hope you have a wonderful Sunday.